So we have already seen these things, but we'll quickly run through some of the few previous passages. Savitri is attending to all the household jobs, the labor of broom and jar and well, of altar and kitchen. No slight task allowed to others that her woman's strength might do. The whole idea is here. In all her acts, His strange divinity shone. In all her acts, her strange divinity shone. It's a great compliment to Savitri, of course. Now, the question one could ask is this poet's reading of the whole situation, or is it that Savitri herself realizes that in all her acts there is a strange divinity working? So, what do you say? I believe this is what the poet is seeing behind every action of Savitri. Savitri herself is not perhaps aware in that sense. She is doing it routinely as a very natural kind of a thing. She doesn't have to go and do as if intentionally, purposefully that the divinity shines in all her acts. She is doing it in a very spontaneous, natural manner and all that thing, you see. So she does not even realize that she is doing something of that kind. But this poet notices it. The poet notices, he observes it, he sees that thing into simplest moment. And why is he saying that? Because all love was hers, and that love is one which is binding her to all. Now, this is important when we are seeing the latest situation in the psychology of Savitri, which is being described here. Savitri is in the company of her husband. He is giving her all that he can give, but that is too little for her need. Too little from both the points of view. That the time duration is too short and she would like to have everything of that in the time available for her. Too little because she is much vaster than all the human relationships. And to a certain extent, what Satyavan is giving to her is a human relation. That is not going to do for her. It's not sufficient for her at all, you see, obviously. And then all her acts divinely shone, and her love is binding to everybody. Therefore, we have got now this remarkable passage. Although with a vain imaginary bliss of fiery union through death's door of escape, she dreamed of her body robed in funeral flame. She knew she must not clutch that happiness to die with him and follow, seizing his robe across our other countries, travelers glad beyond into the sweet or terrible beyond. She is weighing the possibility, the pros and cons of going as Sati, when her husband will die and his body will be on the fire. She will also plunge into the fire and burn alive in that flame. She is weighing the pros and cons of that thing, but she immediately dismisses that. Firstly, going like that is vain imaginary bliss for her. It may be, she doesn't know definitely whether that act will really give her true bliss. true bliss. So it could be an imagination to burn oneself and be happy like that, you see. And because it is imaginary, therefore it is vain. And Savitri is dismissing that thing not because of the imaginary bliss, but because for those sad parents still would need her here. That is the most important thing. It is that which is holding her back. Satyavan's mother and father, they are old, there is nobody to look after them, and if she also goes away along with Satyavan, who will take care of them? So, I mean, it is not just a human relationship that as if kind of a social obligation she has to do that. Not at all. Because it is the love that binds to everybody. It is not her relationship with her husband, but what about the whole world? What about the whole world? How can she go away like that? How can she go away? Her intimacy, her contact, her oneness with the world is definitely weighing very strongly in her thought, in her consideration. And she says, no, I can't go like that. They have to be. So this is not that she is becoming passionate and looking after the old parents at all, see. But this is the way of saying that her contact with this earth is firm. Her oneness with the creature kind here has to be always there. She can't walk away from this world like that for her personal individual bliss. Yes, by going as a sati, she would get all that bliss. But then that is her personal bliss. For her, that is not going to do. What about the whole world? In other words, she is, though not fully conscious, overtly, there is something in her. Look, perhaps I have come here for some work, and how can I walk away from this work without doing that work? The work in the oneness of this whole creation here, you see. For those old parents still would need her here to help the empty. That's the way you're saying, I mean, hopefully we are saying. Now, but the fact that the poet is introducing the idea of sati here in the description is pertinent. He is not going to he is not going to do it for trivial reasons, for artificial reasons, for small reasons at all. In other words, there is a certain value, certain content, certain stuff in the whole psychological and spiritual aspect of going as sati. And in order to highlight that thing, he is introducing it deliberately in the entire course of the description here. Now, it is a different matter that in the process of social development, social traditions, it got degraded. But that does not take away the original value of going as sati along with the dead husband. That does not go away, that value. It has a certain content in that thing. The relationship between the two is so intimate that it can last for 7 years, 7 lives, one after the other. And therefore she is perfectly justified from that angle. Well, by going, it does not mean that I disappear. I come again with him next time and live again like that, you see. There is an occult content in that thing. It is a different matter, as I said, that in the social tradition, it got totally degraded, debased, vulgarized even to some extent, and it had to go away. That had to be stopped, you see. Now, the idea of sati is a very old idea. Idea in the sense that the spiritual content of it, the meaning behind it. In the Mahabharata, around 3000 BC, which means 5000 years ago, there is a mention of one of the wives of the Pandava's father had gone as sati. He had two wives, Madri and Kunti. So when Pandu passed away, then Madri went along with him as Sati. In the Mahabharata is mentioned, and she got glorified. Her spirit shone, as we have seen in the case of Satyavan, her spirit rose from the burning fire, luminous spirit, luminous Satyavan. Same way, her spirit also got merged with the spirit of her husband, you see, in that process. Madri went away as Sati there. Madri, again, a woman who is coming from Madra, Ashwapati's palace is Madra, capital city, you see. She had come from that place, you see, Madri. There is a mention of that thing, you see. And there are many other incidences also in the Indian tradition which are describing this act. But let me narrate a few aspects of it. Sati, as I told you last time, etymologically, the word comes from Sat. Sat means truth, who sacrifices himself for truth. Sati is the feminine of Sat, true. His feminine is Sati, given to truth. Sati means given to truth. In the conventional sense now, Sati means chaste woman. Woman. A woman, chaste, who will have relationship with none except her husband. Chaste, Chaste, chaste woman. What happened? No. Yeah. Well, that is what the Sati means basically now. Now, I told you the story of Dakshayani, the daughter of Daksha. Daksha was a king, Prajapati, originator of a human race, Prajapati, and he had performed a Vedic sacrifice, and he did not invite his son-in-law for the sacrifice. It was a huge, majestic, royal sacrifice in a very lavish manner and all that thing. He did not invite his son-in-law, that is Shiva, because Shiva is a sannyasi, an ascetic, who will run away from the world, see like that. So he did not want him to come here for such a function like that. He did not invite. But his daughter was there and she felt insulted. That big yajna is going on and my husband is not invited, my father is not inviting him, so she felt insulted. And as a result of that, she burnt herself in the flame, Dakshayani. And that is the first Puranic recorded incidence of Sati that is given as an example of Sati. Then when Shiva came out of his trance, out of his meditation and saw that his wife is not there now anymore, then he took the form of anger, Raudra, violence. What is this? That kind of a thing, you see. And then from every bone of her burnt body, he created a woman, Parvati, out of his tapasya. And then they espoused and lived together. So Sati came back again to live with him in another form, that you see. By the power of his tapasya, he brought her back to life from the burning pieces of her body, you see, like that, you see. That is the Sati. She was not invited, but Sati came. Now, there are records of Sati when Alexander the Great invaded India about 300 BC. Then the philosopher, BC, yeah. Then the philosopher who was accompanying him, Aristobulus, Alexander's was also having a philosopher in his retinue, Aristobulus. He had recorded all the events and happenings wherever Alexander had gone there, and he has also recorded certain observations about India when Alexander came to India at that time. And there he mentions that in Takshila as we call it, Takshashila, that is the present Tashkent. Yeah, when he came there, he recorded a woman burning herself in the fire as Sati. So that is the Greek record of the Sati in 300 BC, around that time, you see. Then it continued like that. There are official records during the period of Gupta dynasty, that is about 400 AD, 300, 400 AD, you see. And they have recorded a lot of events where women had gone as Sati, voluntarily Sati, you see. But Sati was stopped officially in the early Muslim rule in India. The early Muslim rule in India was from 1200 to roughly 1500 AD, for 300 years. What is called the Sultanate. The Sultans who came to India, they ruled India, and they had passed orders at that time that if a woman wants to go as Sati, she has to take official permission before she does it. Yeah. She has to take official permission to go as Sati. She now just go and burn herself like that, you see. But basically, that is what happened. Later on, during the Mughal period, 1500, 1600 AD, about 400 years ago, little more than that, Akbar the Great officially passed an order prohibiting Sati. Officially passed an order prohibiting Sati, you see. But still, after that, the tradition of Sati continued here and there in different parts, you see. Because after all, they could not, exercise their power at the traditional level at every point there, you see. If a woman goes, it will be known later on, but by that time the woman would have gone away, you see. By 18th century, the practice had been banned completely. Then came the period of revival of India, the Renaissance. And one of the important figures during 1800 or so, 19th century, middle 19th century, the name is Raja Ram Mohan Roy. You must have heard of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He was the social reformer, and he saw that no woman, of course his influence was in Bengal, no woman in Bengal goes as Sati. The point was basically the widow was forced to go as Sati. It's not a voluntary act. She was forced to go as Sati, you see. And it is that he says, no, stop, you see. And that became a very powerful tool for social reformation at that time, you see. Rajaram Mohan Roy was a great reformer, social reformer, you see. In fact, he was a modern person in his ideals and thoughts and activities also. At the same time, he had imbibed all the good traditions of India. He had kept both. What is positive, what is good, that he had kept. At the same time, he had a very modern mind of looking at things, that is social problem. And he used to have two bungalows, two palaces. Two palaces, bungalows. Raja Ram Mohan Roy used to have two houses, two palaces, you see. And in one house, in one palace, he used to have everything going on according to the Indian tradition. Receiving guests, receiving friends, welcome, all those kind of things. In the other palace, he used to entertain the Europeans. So that is how he combined both the East and the West at that time. You see, he had two palaces, you see, one specially reserved for the Western society, the other for observing Indian traditions, you see. So that was his solution of changing things, you see. Now, in 1829, sati was banned officially as an act in Bengal, particularly in Bengal. In 1980, recently, about 30 years ago, it was officially banned in Rajasthan. Officially banned in Rajasthan. Now, of course, it doesn't happen, but it was officially banned in Rajasthan. But there is something very noble also of going as sati. When the Muslim invasions were taking place in the western part of India, particularly Rajasthan, then the Rajputs warriors used to fight very bravely, but then used to get defeated by the Muslims, and many of the heroes would get killed in the process. Now, as a collective effort, collective action, all their widows would plunge simultaneously in the burning fire of their dead husbands. That is called Jauhar, Jahur. Just sacrifice yourself. I don't want to get immolated by these invaders. Because what will they do? They will immolate me. They will capture me. They will make me slave. Why should I go and do that kind of a thing? Instead, let me burn myself in the fire. The Jauhar was a very noble tradition in that sense, you see. And it was a very spontaneous, immediate kind of an action. And collective. 300, 400 ladies burning all together along with the fire of their dead husbands, you see. And that had made a tremendous impact also in the entire custom tradition. But of course, that was history about 300 years ago, 200, 300 years ago, you see, when there were constant Muslim invasions on the western part of India, you see. Jauhar, Rajasthan, Rajputs is a great historical event in that sense, is in India, you see. In the south, Bangalore and that region, there were 5 Muslim kingdoms, small kingdoms, you see, and they had fought a combined battle against the Raja of Vijayanagar, the Hampi Empire, which was so glorious and beautiful. He was the king at the time, most flourishing king. I mean, individually they tried to defeat him, Vijayanagar Empire, but he was very powerful. Then these people, although of each other's enemies, they came together to defeat him. And the battle at Talikota, I think the date is there, I got it, 26th January 1565. 1565, all these 5 Muslim kings came together and fought the battle against the king of Vijayanagar. And he was defeated. And as a result of that, a large number of widows or the heroes there, they sacrificed themselves along with their dead husbands, you see. Large number of heroes, you see. Now, it has an occult impact. You see, it may look traditionally, socially, etc., something very rare, but it has certain occult meaning. You see, that kind of a sacrifice does not go waste. It brings something back to the country and to the values of life here, you see. So that way, it continued like that for several years. Now, of course, it is dead. It is not there. Although, very, very stray incidences do take place in backward parts of the country, you see, where the woman is forced to go along with her dead husband, you see. But if that act is caught, how many people are punished for that criminally, you see. So that way, sati has certain meaning, certain content, certain value also, occult basis is there, And Sri Aurobindo is not introducing, the yogi is not introducing this aspect here in the poem for nothing. He is introducing it with a certain deliberate purpose, that there is an occult meaning. By going there, you are kind of forcing your vital, your spiritual will to achieve something. That is the gain in the entire movement of the thing, you see. I mean, although socially it may look very ugly to us, but the occult gain which comes out of that is something very valuable also, you see. It may be a kind of a violent action of forcing the issue, but that action brings certain merit also, you see. So, therefore, there is a purposeful mention of this aspect. Although with a vain imaginary bliss of fiery union through death's door of escape, she dreamed of her body robed in funeral flame. Absolute sati description, you see. She knew she must not clutch that happiness, to die with him and follow, seizing his robe across our other countries, travelers glad into the sweet or terrible beyond. See, purposeful description is there. See, it's not dismissed that act. For those, and then the counter is, well, Savitri cannot go a sati. Savitri cannot. Dakshayani is going a sati because her husband is insulted. She is burning herself, but Savitri's case is that what about this world? What about these poor people here around? If I go away, who is going to take care of them? That oneness of love is what holds her back from all that action.